School Days is a series infamously known for its notorious ending, but as many of you on this channel already know, that's just scratching the surface. Most people only know the anime ending. The anime is an adaptation of the original visual novel School Days, created by Overflow in Japan, and the visual novel, at least the definitive HQ edition, has 22 endings alone. On top of that, there's an official manga and a PS2 port which also has additional separate endings. Essentially, there's no real canon ending to the story. How it ends is really up to you and your own interpretation. Now, if you piece together the family relations between the characters, there's a pretty disturbing family tree that comes from it. And since I've made my iceberg video on this, the creators have actually come out and said that the family tree, the one floating around online that I saw, is not canon, which kind of doesn't make any sense, but I'm not going to argue with the creators of the series. All that to say, this story can end in a lot of different ways. Some good, some bad, and some with homicide. And that's exactly why, for today's video, I'm reviewing and ranking each and every School Days ending from D tier all the way up to the 2 lovers tier. Now, I've played through the game and gotten every single ending myself, painstakingly so, and I can say with confidence that I don't actually dislike any of them. But there are definitely ones I like more than others. This list is completely subjective. I'm not ranking these by best or worst outcome, just by what I personally find the most entertaining, emotionally sensible, or the most wholesome or tragic. One thing I'm not going to do though, I'm not going to bring up the PS2 port's endings for 2 reasons. For one, most of them are just extra scenes bolted on to original endings that already exist, and secondly, I've never played the PS2 port myself. I could just watch videos of it, but I'm trying to be more sincere on this channel. I don't want to talk about something I haven't experienced firsthand. Context matters with a lot of these endings, and just watching it without playing the route yourself doesn't do it justice. That said, if enough of you want a dedicated LXH video down the line, let me know. I'd be happy to make that its own thing. And as always, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thanks to channel members. I've got some links down below too. I stay pretty busy on the internet, so check that out if you want more of me. And with that out of the way, let's begin. So we might as well start with the anime ending. Now, if you're on this channel watching this video, you've probably seen it before, but it's worth going over again because it is pretty good. So in every interpretation of School Days, be it anime, manga, or the original source material, it all starts the same. Makoto Ito is a young man who rides the train every morning and is pretty well bored with life in general. The only thing that brings him any excitement is getting to see the beautiful girl on the train, Katsura Kotonoha. He longs for her but doesn't ever make a move. While at school, his crush is noticed by Saionji Sekai, another member of this love triangle who vows to bring the two together through her meddling or through her helpfulness, whatever you want to call it. A love triangle does ensue in drama and chaos as well. Throughout this anime series, Makoto will waver back and forth, ultimately deciding to choose Sekai over Kotonoha because being with Kotonoha is more tiresome than being with Sekai. And to be fair, Makoto and Sekai have much better chemistry than Makoto and Kotonoha. However, Makoto is not satiated enough with Sekai as he cheats on her with another girl named Otome Kato. After this, he begins to sleep around with all kinds of different women in the school until finally Sekai reveals that she is pregnant. Now, it's never confirmed whether or not she was pregnant or not, as Kotonoha has her doubts and even says as much at the end of the anime. But again, we don't know for certain, and we probably never will. Of course, Sekai is driven to the point of insanity when Makoto and Kotonoha recommend her to what appears to be an abortion clinic. She goes crazy and kills Makoto. After this, Kotonoha Katsura walks in on a corpse Makoto and she goes crazy. After this, she confronts Sekai and then ends Sekai's life. The anime ends with a nice boat sailing off into the distance, with Kotonoha hanging on to the severed head of Makoto. What makes this, in my opinion, particularly infamous is that nothing in this anime up to this point would lead you to believe that it would end in such a bloody way. If you played the visual novel, you probably knew this was coming, but if you just saw the anime, you were probably like, Nani the fuck? What? You know what I mean? But this is pretty crazy to watch and is pretty fascinating. And as much as people claim to hate this series, most people don't hate the ending. In fact, it's the one thing they say they actually do like the series for. Now, where I would rank this is surprisingly in the B tier, and here's why. I'll tell you that to begin with, it's kind of an amalgamation of two of the visual novel's endings, To My Child and Bloody End. So it's not an ending that you'll see in the original source material. That's not a bad thing necessarily. However, if you watch the series, it's the characters, the way that they act towards the end, it's kind of unbelievable. Now, Sekai going crazy somewhat makes sense, and I can see where she's coming from. Obviously, I don't condone murder for any reason, right? But then when Kotonoha comes into the room to see a dead Makoto, why is her first thought immediately to defile his corpse and not to, call the police or something? I could see her breaking down, but her shift to a yandere type just kind of doesn't make any sense at this point, right? Now, I'm not saying it's too unbelievable for Kotonoha to go crazy. That does make sense, but I mean, this is the meek, weak Kotonoha who spent the entire series getting bullied and being passive about these events happening in her life. It's a big jump to go from that to sawing somebody's head off, especially a cadaver. Do you know what I mean, right? That's a lot to do. I don't know, it just seems like it was just done to be shocking. The ending is still good, the anime is still goated, but I mean, this ending, compared to the other endings, I put it middle of the road, so yeah, B tier. But with that, let's move on. The School Days manga adaptation is one that is criminally underrated. You should check it out. The illustrations are amazing, and while it is relatively short, we do get to see the main three characters fleshed out more, in my opinion. We see Makoto as being a decent guy who just makes some bad decisions. We see Sekai as quite a bit less selfish than she is in the anime. And we get more hints early on at Kotonoha maybe not being all there. You see, Makoto has been feeling really guilty about two-timing Kotonoha with Sekai, to the point where he finally decides to break up with Sekai in order to get back with Kotonoha. Sekai accepts this. She's not happy, but she accepts it, and Makoto runs to go back to Kotonoha. But before he can, Kotonoha confronts him. Kotonoha forgives Makoto, but does not forgive Sekai, and then she wields her hatchet and goes to attack Sekai. Before she can lob off her head, Makoto jumps in the way to take the stab wound, and that chapter ends. The 12th and final chapter starts with Makoto in the hospital being visited by all of his friends and Sekai. While talking to Sekai, Makoto tells her that he plans to recommit himself to Kotonoha. I guess she doesn't go to jail for some reason, but he realizes this is all his fault and he's going to do his best to make Kotonoha better. Which again, you're the one in the hospital, dude, but whatever. However, after he says this, he gets a call from Kokoro, Kotonoha's little sister. Kokoro calls and is in a panic, saying that she just got home and she found Kotonoha on the floor covered in blood. And you can probably guess what happened. Sekai then reveals herself to be the villain and says that she's going to take care of Makoto, and that how could Kotonoha possibly take care of Makoto when she's the one that tried to hurt him. And now she's gone. The final few panels of the manga is of Makoto saying, "This is all my fault," and it ends. So I should point out, in case you're wondering, the Cross Days manga, has a much different Makoto than the School Days one. Obviously, the School Days manga, in my opinion, is phenomenal. It's really good. The only complaint I would have is similar to the anime one. Yes, we see why Kotonoha would go crazy, but it's actually the reverse, where Sekai's craziness kind of comes out of nowhere. But, I mean, the manga is so good. It does a good job of showing off the characters, the illustrations, that honestly, I put this in the A tier. You should check it out if you can. With that, let's move on. Alright, we'll start with the visual novel endings and Kotonoha. Kotonoha has the most endings out of any character in this game, but that number is a bit misleading. She has 7, but 4 of them are the exact same thing, only with, a little bit different dialogue and the path to get there being a little bit different. Some events may or may not happen, but the ending's ultimately the same. So let's start with the best possible Kotonoha ending, although that may be subjective, Christmas Eve. In order to get this ending, you have to be as faithful to Kotonoha as possible, meaning you have to reject Sekai and all of her advances, and she makes a lot of them. Sekai does offer to let Makoto practice on her. You can sleep with Sekai at this point in the game as well, after the fact, and that branches off to a different path. But to get the Christmas Eve ending, you have to be as faithful as possible. And towards the end, Makoto, while feeling guilty, and Sekai, while being crushed, it's really depressing, but it's also very romantic. Towards the end, Makoto says to himself that he doesn't care who he has to hurt, he just wants to dedicate himself to Kotonoha. And the two of them enjoy a Christmas Eve together in a fancy, expensive hotel. They have sex one last time before the game ends. So I want to put this ending right up there in the A tier because, yeah, it's wholesome, it's romantic, and to get this ending, Makoto never has to cheat. He never has to do anything wrong, despite the fact that Sekai's friends are all pretty upset with him because they think he cheated on Sekai, and Sekai never clears this up, which is a little frustrating. But that could be a sequence break, so I'm not exactly sure. But it's a little frustrating. Other than that, I give this ending an A plus if I could, but nothing will beat, the higher up tier. But with that out of the way, let's move on. The Lust ending. I remember this ending decently well. This was the first ending I ever got when I played the game for myself like over 10 years ago. However, this might be my least favorite ending now that I've seen them all, and I'll tell you why. So to begin with, the title is a bit misleading. In order to get to this ending, you really don't have to have sex in that game that much at all. You do have sex with Sekai, but you don't at all with Kotonoha, despite the fact it's a Kotonoha ending. Let me explain. So to get this ending, Makoto has to be mostly trying to get with Sekai, but without letting Kotonoha down basically at all. He's still nice to her, but he's aiming towards Sekai. You see what I mean? So towards the end of the game, Kotonoha will come to Makoto's house in an attempt to seduce him after he's already proclaimed that he's going out with Sekai. Kotonoha begins by taking her top off, and Makoto and her begin to go at it. However, halfway during this, Makoto decides to back off, feeling guilty, and says this isn't right. Meanwhile, Kotonoha takes a picture of Makoto with her, both in a state of undress. Keep that in mind for later. After this, Kotonoha tells Makoto that she's not going to give up, and that if she can get Sekai to back off, if Makoto will promise to go out with Kotonoha. Makoto agrees because he thinks there's no way. The next day, at school, Kotonoha approaches Sekai and tries to convince her to back off of Makoto. She says there's no way, but Kotonoha shows Sekai that picture she took of Makoto and her in a state of undress. Sekai gets sick and goes to the nurse's office, and we never hear from her throughout the rest of the game. Later on that day, Kotonoha and Makoto are both on the train together, and Kotonoha declares victory, saying, "Hey, you got to go out with me now. And Makoto gets angry saying, well, what did you do to her? And Kotonoha just says, I just showed her this picture. And that's basically the end of the game. It ends pretty abruptly. I don't know. It's hard to believe Sekai would just give up that easily. I mean, despite everything, I mean, I know that's a bit shocking, but with the context of the game as a whole, it just doesn't seem right that she would just immediately back off that way. Not to mention, it just ends sort of abruptly with Makoto being angry, but Kotonoha being like, well, you're mine now. I mean, he could always still just say no, I guess, but I don't know. It's kind of a short ending. The final episode's kind of short. I'll rank this in the D tier. Again, I don't dislike really any of the endings, but this is the one I like the least. The Lust ending. With that, let's move on. With Kotonoha is a somewhat average ending with a bizarre epilogue scene that really adds nothing and hurts it in the end. So in With Kotonoha, throughout the game, Makoto wavers between Sekai and Kotonoha, ultimately leaning towards Sekai, until Sekai and Makoto have an argument over Otome, where she thinks he's cheating on her with Otome. This whole time, however, Kotonoha still thinks Makoto just loves her and says that she'll come over to Makoto's house for the weekend. When Sekai finds out about this, Sekai says, no, come over to my house instead, and Makoto just can't give her an answer because, for one, he's a little upset over the argument, and for two, he still has some feelings over Kotonoha. Sekai hears this and is disappointed, but just tells Makoto, I'll be waiting for you at my home. Presumably just spread eagle naked on the bed, I guess. She goes home and Makoto still doesn't know what to do until he gets a pep talk from Taisuke, of all people. After this, he says he's made up his mind, and he goes home where Kotonoha is waiting for him, and they go inside and the game just ends. However, after the credits, you get a bizarre epilogue scene, which should be kind of cute. They're laying in bed together, and Kotonoha basically says, she becomes basically uninhibited with her sexual desires and says they're going to do it all the time, essentially. Kotonoha then gets a call from Kokoro on her phone, and Makoto picks it up for her and accidentally activates the video call feature, which is impressive for a flip phone from 2006. He then shows the phone to Kotonoha, revealing a naked Kotonoha making this weird, bizarre AI-looking hand gesture and a really sexy-looking face at the camera, with Kokoro watching and Kokoro being an elementary schooler. This is just bizarre, and then the game ends. So it's somewhat of an average ending. I'd say it's okay, but that last scene just seems like it was added for no reason other than to show us a naked Kotonoha, which is awesome, which is always nice, but just a weird situation. I'm putting this one in the C tier, and with that, let's move on. So, as I stated earlier, to Kotonoha, after the kiss, it begins with the first kiss, and all hers are all basically the same ending with minimal, slightly different dialogue and a slightly different path to get here. There are some events that may or may not happen, such as Taisuke assaulting Kotonoha. So you don't want that. But in this ending, basically to get here, you have to be all for Kotonoha and have sex with Kotonoha in the break room, but after this, Makoto then pushes heavily towards Sekai, maybe thinking he's made the wrong decision. As the result of this, Sekai's friends begin to bully Kotonoha very heavily. They already were, but now they just kick it up a notch. They're being pretty aggressive with her. This includes Nanami Kanroji, Otome Kato, and Otome's three friends who I still haven't had their names memorized, but whatever. Anyway, they're bullying her pretty hard, and Makoto finds out about this. You have to also make some choices to get back in Kotonoha's favor, but regardless, he finds out about this, and in what might be the most cathartic moment in this entire game, Makoto then decides to tell off Nanami and Sekai, and tell them to back off. He then rushes to Kotonoha's classroom where he sees Kotonoha being bullied and then, puts his hand on one of them. He says, y'all need to back off. He then talks to Otome saying, if you really like me, you'll tell your friends to stop. And she does. Makoto rides in like a knight on a white horse or whatever and rescues Kotonoha. They then go to the roof to have lunch together, and in a really cute scene, it's shown that Kotonoha is just a bad cook. They have a meal together, and they may or may not kiss, and the dialogue may or may not be a little different, but regardless, the game ends. This is a pretty wholesome and, like I said, cathartic ending. I mean, yes, he does decide to back off of Kotonoha after taking her virginity, which is pretty shitty, but I'd say this is above average. I'm going to put it in the A tier. And by the way, like I said, all these 4 endings are basically the same. If you don't believe me, you can always get the game for yourself. It's on Jest right now. I can't link to it probably, but if you go buy it now, whenever the remake comes out, you can upgrade for free. I'm not sponsored, by the way. Not yet. Wink, wink, nudge. But anyway, whenever that does come out, I think I'll do another Let's Play of it just to capitalize on... Nah, fuck it. I'm gonna capitalize on it. But I mean, for real though, I don't know. I had a lot of fun. Let me know what y'all think. I also want to do a Shiny Days playthrough. At least 1 or 2. But anyway, that is 2 Kotonoha. And with that, let's move on to the Sekai endings. So I hate to start us off on the wrong foot, but I Love You, despite the title, might be one of the more boring endings on this list. In this ending, to get this ending I should say, Makoto has to pull for Sekai pretty early on, but still have sex with Kotonoha during the school festival and then go right back to Sekai. This, of course, leaves Kotonoha confused and thinking that she has to constantly have sex with Makoto, and she gives him a hand job on the train, which is interesting, but anyway, Sekai finds out about this and gets mad and breaks up with Makoto. And in the end, Makoto decides he has to try to win Sekai back, so he finds Sekai at the train station, apologizes, and professes his love only for Sekai. And Kotonoha, I assume, just fucks off somewhere. What makes this ending unique is that it is 1 or 2 choices, and I cannot stress this enough. You make 1 or 2 wrong mistakes and you will get a bad ending. It's really close. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, the ending is I love you, and Makoto tells Sekai he loves her. But it's kind of boring, so I'm gonna put it on the D tier. But with that, let's move on. With Honesty is a pretty good and romantic and wholesome ending, but it's kind of weird how to get here. There's a few ways you can get to this ending. I'll tell you the way that I got it. So basically, Makoto wavers in between Sekai and Kotonoha with a heavy lean towards Sekai. But he's good enough to Kotonoha that Kotonoha actually invites Makoto to the hotel room on Christmas Eve. However, Sekai begs him not to go and says instead, just come and find me. I'll be waiting at the train station where we had our first kiss. While Makoto is a bit conflicted, he ultimately decides on what to do. We see Sekai at the train station alone and crying, and at the last minute, Makoto shows up and confesses his love for Sekai. The two embrace while the snow falls. It's just wholesome and happy, and the game ends. Now for this one, I'll put it in the B tier, maybe a low B. There's nothing wrong with it. It is wholesome and romantic. I just don't understand why he would just suddenly snub Kotonoha at the end. But again, this scene is pretty romantic, so we'll put it in the B tier. There are better ones, so let's move on to the next one. Bavaroy. At least I think that's how you pronounce it, but Bavaroi is a Sekai ending, and it might be probably my favorite, to be totally honest with you. It's the mirror version of Lust, the Kotonoha ending that I said was terrible. This is way better. So in Bavaroi, the story plays out the same as with Kotonoha's Lust ending, where Kotonoha manipulates Sekai into basically being angry with Makoto, but this time Makoto doesn't just go with Kotonoha, he decides to try to apologize to Sekai. He goes to Sekai's home where Sekai won't let him in and won't talk to him, and he simply waits outside for an opportunity to talk to Sekai. He's desperate, he really wants to apologize, and he wants to make things right, but Sekai won't hear it. Then Sekai's mother, Yoko, yeah, remember her? Although, she's not going to get down and dirty in this game, in Shiny Days, we'll get there. But anyway, Yoko brings home some dessert, some Bavaroi, which again, I've never heard of. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it because it's French. She brings home some pastries to share with Sekai, and then she asks Sekai, hey, you know your boyfriend's outside, right? He's just been waiting for you out in the cold. So Sekai finally realizes Makoto's determination and decides to forgive him, running outside to Makoto to embrace him, make up with him, and then invite him inside to share pastries with her mother. And hopefully that's all they do once again, although maybe not. But anyways, all kidding aside, this is an A-tier ending. It's one of the better endings in my opinion in the game, and I believe it's probably the best ending, if not close, for Sekai. I loved it a lot when I saw it. I thought it was wholesome and romantic. Oh, and by the way, I guess Kotonoha just fucks off forever. But anyway, with that all said, Bavaroi, let's move on. Love Fulfilled is the mirror ending to With Kotonoha, one of the Kotonoha endings. As you'll recall, in that ending, Makoto wavered in between Sekai and Kotonoha, and ultimately picked Sekai, but then Sekai and him have an argument about Otome, and then looks like things are up in the air on who Makoto is going to be with in the end. Of course, Kotonoha tells Makoto she'll go over to his place for the weekend so they can basically just get it on all weekend, and Sekai says instead, come to my place. Well, in this ending, Sekai is waiting outside her place, sad, dejected, and defeated until Setsuna shows up. Yeah, remember her? Her and Setsuna have a talk where Setsuna, gives her a pep talk, tells her it's all good, and then she reveals that she has Makoto, that basically she dragged Makoto over. Makoto was kind of up in the air and a bit embarrassed and sad about what happened and didn't know whether he could face Sekai, but Setsuna forces him, like, no, you come over here. Sekai and Makoto embrace as Setsuna walks away in a really cool kind of anime moment, you know what I mean? And that's the ending. This one's not bad. It's also not good, though. I'm putting it in the C tier. It's okay. There is this adorable epilogue scene in which it just has Makoto and Sekai at the beach taking pictures and making memories together. Which, if you remember in With Kotonoha, there was that epilogue scene where Kotonoha throws up a gang sign at the camera for some reason. So this is better than that, but I'll put it in the C tier. It's just alright. Anyway, let's move on. So, despite the name being Setsuna's Feelings, this is a Sekai ending. Setsuna does get her own ending, and we'll get to that in a minute, as well as throughout points of the story on certain routes, Makoto can have sex with Setsuna and the girls be none the wiser, which is pretty cool. But anyway, Setsuna's Feelings is a weird one, and there's a lot of problems with this ending. Although it is ultimately wholesome, it's honestly not very good. So in a weird continuity paradox situation, instead of Setsuna and her mother going to Paris, it's actually Yoko and her daughter Sekai that are gonna have to go to Paris. Sekai tries to convince her mother that they should stay in Japan, but Yoko slaps Sekai for her being selfish for wanting to stay in Japan just for Makoto. By the way, in this ending, Kotonoha is just completely out of it. She's just fucked off, and she's with Taisuke now, and They are not having a good time, but we don't need to get into that now. No. But anyway, Sekai and Makoto give up on their relationship, but Setsuna doesn't want that. So Setsuna, to make Sekai jealous, says she'll go out with Makoto instead. And this upsets Sekai, but Sekai's like, well, I don't know what else I can do. I'm moving to Paris. But this is all a weird plan in order to get Sekai not to give up on Makoto. And then Setsuna goes over to Makoto's house for their plan. They pocket dial Sekai and then pretend to have sex while Sekai is listening, which is just absolutely a terrible thing to do. On top of this, Setsuna goes to Makoto's house and actually gets undressed as if to fake out us, the viewer, but nothing happens. It's like, if you're just going to be doing it over the phone, why did you have to get naked? What? Which is just a really weird, really bizarre thing to just kind of trick us with. Anyway, this motivates Sekai not to give up, and Sekai goes back to Yoko and says, I don't want us to leave, which then forces Setsuna and her mother to go to Paris instead, which is just a baffling premise. Like, your daughter says she doesn't want to go, so we're just going to send this other woman, which is just weird in and of itself. Anyway, Sekai and Makoto get back together, and then they see off Setsuna, who's leaving on a plane to go to Paris, and then Setsuna and Makoto kind of joke that they'll pretend to have sex again one day. They think it's funny, but Sekai say, hey, don't do that. It's just weird. It's just a really weird ending. It's definitely D tier, and this might be the only E tier ending. The only thing that saves it is that it's kind of wholesome that Setsuna is willing to go so far in order to keep Sekai happy and to keep their relationship maintained. Although, again, she can have sex with Makoto and Sekai be none the wiser in other routes, but me da igual. It's going in the D tier. Let's move on. Hikari Kuroda has 2 dedicated endings, which is more than Otome and Setsuna, which is a bit unusual, but they're both pretty similar. We'll go over them now because there's only one difference. It's a big one, it's a massive difference with one choice, but I'll go over that when we get to it. So anyway, in this timeline, Makoto is more about Kotonoha than he is Sekai, and Sekai and her mother do end up leaving and going to Paris. Now, this leaves Makoto with just Kotonoha, but unfortunately, during the school festival, Makoto abandons Kotonoha, and Kotonoha falls into, unfortunately, the predatory arms of Taisuke. This is a side note, but Taisuke has a lot of sex scenes himself for some reason, and I want to say none of them are consensual. They all end badly. Yeah, Taisuke, if you thought he was bad in the anime, he's way worse in the game. I mean, it is just abysmal. It's diabolical. It's horrible. But anyway, what ends up happening is Kotonoha is with Taisuke, and Taisuke during school is, well, having his way with Kotonoha. It's hard to watch. Makoto tries to find Kotonoha and stumbles upon the two, Taisuke having his way with Kotonoha, but Makoto, rather than, calling the cops or rushing in there to beat him up, he decides this is hot and he starts watching from an open door and starts to get off on it. Hikari then shows up, and remember, Hikari has a crush on Taisuke herself, and rather than, call the cops or run in there and beat him up or something, she joins Makoto, and the two of them just sort of watch as they start to, get aroused. Makoto then assaults Hikari right there while Taisuke is assaulting Kotonoha. Yeah, this is bad. And after the fact, the two of them come up with a plan because Makoto wants Kotonoha back and Hikari wants Taisuke, so they decide, well, they'll swing with the couple. That way they can both switch partners. It's all around just disgusting. This is a very degenerate ending. I'm not gonna lie about that, so be warned. Anyway, they are gonna set up an orgy or a 4-way with Taisuke and Kotonoha at Kotonoha's house. Hikari shows up late for some reason. I kind of forgot. But yeah, they're all having an orgy. Hikari shows up, and then Makoto has sex with Hikari in front of Kotonoha and Taisuke. I guess Kotonoha is now just a disinhibited slut now, which is just terrifying. But Makoto takes Hikari's first time. During this sex scene, you have the option to pull out, and we'll go over that a bit later. Anyway, if you choose to pull out, after this, Taisuke decides, well, he wants a part of that. So he starts to have sex with Hikari, who does not like it very much at all. Kotonoha tries to persuade Makoto that the two of them need to have sex now, but Makoto doesn't want to do it. For whatever reason, he doesn't want to have sex with Kotonoha. This is really because he's decided that he likes Hikari after all. After this, Makoto and Hikari leave, and Hikari tells Makoto that she still likes Taisuke, but now something's changed, and she likes Makoto a lot better because Makoto is better in bed. Based. Anyway, after this, Makoto and Hikari have public sex out just in the open, and after this, we get the ending. So, in the ending, again, if you chose to pull out, what happens is Makoto is laying in bed with Hikari, who has now just gone completely wild and just has sex with Makoto just all the time, and she is constantly setting up Makoto with different girls to bang. She's become his pimp. And Makoto seems depressed about this. He seems like, well, I don't want to do this, like it's empty and hollow. But Hikari just cheerfully says that she's setting him up with a pair of twins, which are actually the twins from the, Shiny days, which are Shun Hazama's daughters, which again is Makoto's relatives, but, we're not going to get into that, all right? We're just not going to get into that. Anyway, Makoto's just kind of lamenting and depressed about the whole thing. As Hikari says, she's going to become his manager, and that's the ending. Everyone's Makoto. That was dark. The whole premise was dark. But kinda hot too, in a weird way, that Hikari, none of the assaults are okay. Trust me, that's all horrible, that's disgusting, but we're not here to judge the morality of the game, just the endings. But to get to that point, the context does matter. I want to say for this one, I'll put it in the C tier for no other reason than I thought it was kind of cool that Makoto was like, no, I don't want Kotonoha now, I just want Hikari, when he could have gone all the way with Kotonoha as well. We're putting that one in the C tier. But moving on to the next Hikari ending, this one is Sex Friends. So in this ending, the same thing plays out, only except when Makoto is having sex with Hikari, if the option to pull out times out, meaning you forget to click or you choose not to click, Makoto finishes inside of Hikari. The same events play out, only we get to the ending and Hikari says that she's going to the doctor that afternoon and she has a surprise for Makoto. This is a bit more wholesome, but the whole thing is still kind of degenerate. I'm putting both of these in the C tier. I don't think they're the worst. It's just the path to get here. It was disgusting, and I feel bad for Hikari and Kotonoha. As a result of Makoto's actions, they've both become just wild, uninhibited. They're just sex fiends now. But at the very least, Makoto is probably going to have some kind of future with Hikari in the Sex Friends ending. Who knows? I'm putting these both in the C tier. And I can't even show you much of the ending because it's just all nudity, all sex. It's really degenerate. It's degenerate. At least Makoto is feeling depressed about the whole thing, realizing that just having sex with lots of girls is hollow in the end. But with that, we'll move on. Setsuna has one dedicated ending, but it's one of the most unique mechanically in the entire game. It can be gotten in addition to one of the other endings, either Bavaroi or Lust, depending on who you end up with. Let me explain, it's a bit complicated. Remember how I said earlier that given your choices in the game, you can end up in a situation where you have sex with Setsuna? Well, you have the option in that encounter to either pull out or not. So if you choose not to, or if you fail to press the button to pull out, which just sounds crazy to say, you know what I mean? But if you fail to do so, nothing happens and you'll get either the Bavaroi or the Lust ending, depending on which character you're, leaning towards at that time. However, after the end credits, you'll see Makoto at home eating a watermelon and waiting to get picked up by one of his girlfriends for their date, either Kotonoha or Sekai, depending on what ending you got. Makoto will notice a postcard and he'll look at it, and it's from France. The postcard says some words on it, but that doesn't matter because all that matters is it includes a picture of a pregnant Setsuna. After this, Makoto spits up his watermelon as the doorbell rings. Makoto's mom answers, and either Sekai or Kotonoha will be there, in addition to Setsuna, who will proudly proclaim, "I am his wife." I love it. This is A tier. This is an A tier ending for multiple reasons. For one, it's unique. For two, it's hilarious. For three, Makoto is getting his just desserts, or just watermelon, I guess, in this case. And for four, it could potentially be seen as a harem ending, depending on the girl's reaction. So, hey, why not? Go for it. But yeah, just, do they not know about prophylactics in this universe? You know what I mean? But yeah, so don't be eating a snack while you're playing this game, or you might end up with the pregnant Setsuna. Or maybe you want that, hell, just so you know. But with that, let's move on. Kato Otome has one dedicated ending, and honestly, it surprised me. It made me rethink her as a waifu candidate. Yeah, she's still a bad person, she's still a cheater, and she's still a bully. However, this ending was so, cute, wholesome, and romantic that I honestly really had to, I had to rethink her. It bumped her up a few notches, at least for me, right? Anyway, in this ending, Makoto basically wavers back and forth once again between Kotonoha and Sekai, with it being pretty evenly split down the middle. In my playthrough, it was a slight lean towards Sekai. And obviously Makoto spends some time with Otome during this playthrough, but at the end we get the same situation as in with Love Fulfilled or with Kotonoha, in which Sekai says she'll be waiting at home and Kotonoha says she's gonna go to Makoto's home. And Makoto basically has to make a decision on his way home of who he's gonna be with in the end. During this indecision, Makoto realizes that with all of this trouble and drama, there's one girl he's been overlooking. One girl that's been on his side since junior high that he's known the longest, and one that he actually loves instead. So he goes to Otome. Otome accepts his feelings, and the two of them go back to his place where Kotonoha is waiting. No, there's no threesome awaiting, sadly. Kotonoha gets sad and is basically, just has to run away and give up, and Sekai just fucks off for the rest of eternity, I guess, as Makoto and Otome go back to his room and start to have sex. Now, I can't show this, obviously, but, I don't know, this was, one of the more, wholesome and romantic, versions of sex in this game, obviously. Just the dialogue and the way she's like, "I can't believe you chose me after all this time." It was pretty cute. But what makes this ending even better is the epilogue. After this, we get a scene from the perspective of the three bully girls, whose names I refuse to memorize, as they talk about how Makoto has entered into their friend group, and the five of them will, go out on friend dates, I guess, where Makoto and Otome actually have a pretty rocky relationship. The two of them will bicker and argue constantly, and as they're talking about this, Otome and Makoto are in a massive argument. However, the girls say that, well, they always make up in the end, and you see a cute picture of Makoto and Otome making out as the game ends. So I thought this was pretty wholesome, and yeah, they're arguing in the end, but that could just be a sign of passion for Makoto as someone who's just been sort of passive in this, love relationship between Sekai and Kotonoha, not knowing which way to go. With Otome, it's a lot stronger feelings, and the title is called With Earnest Feelings. I really like this. I actually really do, and I want to put this in the A tier. Otome, you win this round. But with that, let's move on. Goodbye Sekai is officially classified as a harem ending, and while there is a harem at the end, I don't think that's necessarily accurate. It's somewhere in between a Sekai ending and a bad ending. This is a bad ending in which nobody has to die, so if you were waiting for that, stand by. We're almost there. Anyway, in Goodbye Sekai, Sekai and her mother are forced to leave for Paris, and Sekai presumably is unable to convince her mother to stay in Japan. This is because the events with Setsuna never happened with Makoto. After Sekai leaves, Makoto simply can't find another woman that he loves, so he's just going about to school having meaningless, empty, hollow sex with a bunch of girls. He's narrating all this. Sekai and Makoto attempt to stay in touch, but Makoto eventually falls out of love. The final scene of this ending has Makoto getting a postcard from France, presumably from Sekai, but he doesn't even read it, he just throws it away, as he invites these two, these twins into his apartment, presumably to bang. And that's it, that's the ending. So, I do like this a lot. I can't give it an A tier, however, because it just doesn't make any sense to me why Makoto wouldn't just go back to Kotonoha or Otome or Setsuna. I mean, Setsuna's still here, so now's her chance, but I guess Makoto just couldn't love anybody like he loved Sekai, so, but then why he would stop talking to her out of nowhere, I don't know. I give it a B tier because it is really good. It's a bad ending and it shows the results of Makoto's actions, and it shows that just having wanton just sex all over the school isn't necessarily the best thing for him. So we'll give it a B tier, a B plus if I could. But with that, we'll move on to the ending you've all been waiting for. At least me.
綺麗でしたよ。
Two Lovers is hands down the best ending in this entire franchise. And no, I'm not going to debate it. I'm not going to argue it. You can leave your dislike. You can email me a death threat. I've gotten a couple of those over the years. That's totally fine. But you're wrong. This is the best ending. This is peak. This is the best. And look, I've never been shy about saying I'm a gooner. I'm a degenerate. If you're just finding this out, sorry about it, but it is what it is. I'm into harems. That's what all of my fan fictions are about. And you might say I'm a degenerate male or whatever, but some people are into furries, some people are into billionaire vampire werewolf rapists, some people are into harems, and that's what I'm into, consensual harems. And I'll tell you this, not only am I into it, but this is one of the better endings of the game, even if you take out my personal fetishes, okay? Let me explain. In this ending, you get with both Kotonoha and Sekai, and it's a consensual throuple, I guess you might call it, right? To get this ending, Makoto has sex with both Kotonoha and Sekai, with Kotonoha being more and more and more disinhibited as the time goes on. There even is a pseudo three-way before this with Sekai getting involved. However, it's not to this degree of what, I can't show you, but what's happening on this roof here. Anyway, Makoto is going at it with Kotonoha on the roof as Sekai goes up there, basically says, stop it, I can't see this anymore. And Kotonoha is the one that's like, hey, why don't you get in on this? And Sekai gives in and, goes and gives oral to Makoto as Kotonoha watches. After this, Kotonoha tells Sekai she's more than willing to share, and Makoto has a choice. This choice is very, very important, by the way. You have to choose to have sex with Sekai. Once you do, Makoto will have sex with Sekai as Kotonoha watches as she's getting off to it, and once it's all done, the two of them will basically agree that they're going to just share Makoto, and Sekai says, alright, fine, you win, I'll share, but just know you have to keep us both happy, which is wholesome and based. The final scene of this ending shows Sekai and Kotonoha meeting up at night to go to Makoto's place to spend Christmas with him. As they're walking along, they talk about their Christmas gifts to Makoto, and they both say they have the same gift. Yeah, in case you haven't figured it out, they're both pregnant with Makoto's children. And as they walk together, they laugh, they have a good time, and they tell each other that Makoto's sure gonna be surprised when he finds out what's about to happen. They giggle, they hold hands, the snow falls, an angel sings, and everything is over. Best ending, triple S tier. My email is in my description. You can go ahead and that's fine. I don't care. This is the best ending. I love it. And look, at the same time, nobody got hurt. No one had to die. Because in most of these endings, no matter what, you hurt one of the girls, either Sekai or Kotonoha. Even being as faithful as possible, like in the Christmas Eve ending, you don't cheat on Kotonoha with anybody, someone still gets hurt, right? No one gets hurt in this ending. It is amazing. It is the best. It is wholesome, and I love it. I love it. It's the best ending. Triple S tier. Let's move on to what you've all really, this is what you've really been waiting on, is the bad endings, right? Now, the degenerate, the wholesome, the sex scenes, you don't want to see that. You want to see violence, right? That's the good stuff. So we'll move on to the bad endings. Alright, we've made it to the bad endings, and to begin with, let's talk about To My Child. I'm going to spoil this outright so I don't get distracted later. This is an A tier ending. This might be the most underrated ending in the entire game. It definitely deserves A plus tier. Unfortunately, nothing will beat Two Lovers, so we're going to put it in the A tier. The reason I love this ending so much is because it's dragged on for so long. It's very depressing and just, it's sad. Now, it's worth mentioning that there are several routes to get to this ending. I believe there's 3 or 4. However, the reason I want to talk about this first is because, do you remember in Two Lovers when I said make sure you have sex with Sekai and not Kotonoha? Well, this is why. If at that moment you choose to have sex with Kotonoha, Sekai, who was on the fence anyway, just gets freaked out and runs away. After this, we see a depressed Sekai who just can't figure out what the hell is going on with Makoto as she pleasures herself with her cell phone. I mean, that's not relevant. I just wanted to bring that up because I was like, what? But anyway, the next day, Makoto and Kotonoha are at his apartment and they're about to get it on. But Makoto is still lamenting what happened with Sekai. Basically, I forgot to mention it, but in order to get to Two Lovers, Kotonoha basically is soft grooming Sekai. But, I mean, yeah, that's not cool, but I don't know. Two Lovers is still based. Anyway, moving on. So, Makoto and Kotonoha are together and they're about to have sex, but Kotonoha says, hey, while we're doing it, let's role play and I want you to pretend that you hate Sekai. Now you might think this is a cruel thing to do, and it is, but the reason for this is because Kotonoha wants Makoto to forget about Sekai once and for all. Not that she hates Sekai, but because Makoto can't get over her not wanting to be a part of their, three-way relationship. Anyway, at the same time, Sekai comes over to Makoto's apartment and just lets herself in. I guess Makoto just doesn't bother to lock his doors, but I guess that's the perks of living in Japan. I mean, who knows? Anyway, so Sekai comes in and she overhears Makoto and Kotonoha getting it on, and she hears them bad-mouthing her. And yeah, this is pretty awful to hear out of context. Hell, even in context, it's horrible. And Sekai basically goes crazy. In the next scene, we see Sekai at home and she's sick. She's not feeling well, she's throwing up. You can probably guess what's going on. But in case you can't, yeah, Sekai is also pregnant at this point with Makoto's child. Remember in Two Lovers how she was pregnant? Yeah, same thing here. Now, it is worth mentioning that, like I said, there's multiple routes to get to this point. And in a separate route, it's possible for Sekai to get together with Taisuke and for Taisuke to, unfortunately, assault Sekai. Later on, when Sekai tells Makoto that she's pregnant, Makoto and her have an argument about whether or not it's his child or Taisuke's child. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, that is a real concern. It could be either ones. We don't know, but that's not the route that I took to get here. We're talking about the route I took to get here. So, unfortunately, after this, we get a time skip to where Makoto and Kotonoha are sitting together at a pier. It's a beautiful scene. They're staring off into the sunset as they talk about how happy they are, and Kotonoha reveals that she is pregnant with Makoto's child. Get it? To my child. Anyway, Kotonoha leaves early as Makoto wants to spend a bit more time at the beach. He laments what happened to Sekai, who has gone missing for the past 6 months. Now, I assume she didn't go missing like she disappeared. She just stopped going to school. But anyway, they never go and check up on her, so I don't know, it's not explained. But anyway, Makoto feels really bad and he laments it, and he says his goodbyes to Sekai, and as he's about to leave, we find out that Sekai has been training with Goku for some reason because she learns instant transmission, and she warps over to Makoto and stabs him in the gut. Now, while this is happening, you can see that Sekai has a baby belly. Yep, she's pregnant too. Makoto falls over in pain but notices she's pregnant, and he says he's happy to see her, and this is really sad. And he's happy to see that she's pregnant. Presumably, he understands it's his child, but of course Sekai can't hear all this. The guy that she just stabbed is saying that he loves her still and he's happy to see her. Sekai drops the knife, freaks out, and runs away. Makoto slowly gets up and is lamenting everything that's happened as he's apologizing to Sekai. He slowly hobbles away while bleeding out. Now, I do want to point out, for as many times as cell phones are used in this series, it's odd that he doesn't try to call I don't know, an ambulance, maybe. I heard those things are pretty cool. But a part of me also thought maybe he intentionally didn't call for help as he doesn't want the mother of his soon-to-be child to get arrested. I don't know, you tell me. But anyway, Makoto is slowly hobbling along as he laments what happened. He feels bad. He loves both of them still, but he professes his love for Sekai in this long, drawn-out death scene as he finally succumbs to his injury and collapses dead. And the game ends. Like I said, this is A tier. This was really sad. I really recommend you play the game for yourself because I'm not doing it justice with my, lispy voice and my goofy jokes and all that. I mean, many of y'all are still mad because I said Two Lovers was peak, but the thing is, right, you have to play it for yourself. This is the saddest ending in my opinion, and it gets overshadowed by Bloody End, which is just frankly kind of cartoony. But this is, yeah, it's a bad ending, but at the end of the day, Makoto died somewhat happy. He really did. He was happy to see Sekai again, and now he's got 2 children on the way, but they will unfortunately never know their father, which is tragic. Anyway, with that, let's move on. Next up, we'll talk about Bloody End, which is possibly the most well-known bad ending, at least of this game. It's also the closest to the anime ending, but I frankly feel like it's overrated. I'm going to put it in the B tier, and let me explain why. In this bad ending, we see a world in which Kotonoha is being bullied relentlessly, all the while she still loves Makoto and hasn't given up on him. We see Kotonoha becoming full yandere and start to stalk Makoto at his home. She's watching him, she sneaks in from time to time, and when she's doing this, it's usually when Makoto and Sekai are going at it, and she just sits there and listens with a dead look in her eyes. Finally, at one point, she's standing at Makoto's balcony, listening to them going at it, and she goes insane. She starts laughing maniacally, runs away, and then in the next scene, we see Sekai and Makoto are having a good time laughing together. They're walking on a walkway, and they see Kotonoha, who presumably was there waiting for them. Sekai tries to greet Kotonoha, and Kotonoha walks up to her, slowly brandishes her weapon, puts it to Sekai's neck, draws it back, cuts her neck open, blood spurts everywhere, Sekai dies, and that's the ending. So the thing is, I'm going to put this in the B tier. I was going to go C, but I think it's worthy of a B. The thing is, I think it's just okay, because it's a bit unbelievable that she would just slowly pull out a weapon and Sekai and Makoto wouldn't react. They wouldn't like freak out. They're just like, huh? What are you doing with that next to my neck? You know? I don't know. And plus the blood spurting, I know that's kind of realistic and that's freaky, but here it just looks too cartoony. I just could never take this one too seriously. Although it is good, it is a decent ending, you know, for what's going on with the context of Kotonoha, and it shows Kotonoha at her absolute worst. This is a tragedy, of course, bloody end. I don't know, what do you think? Let's move on.
That's it!
What's up, Iggy?
I've come up with a new recipe.
Forever is an ending I most well remember as being the creepiest, as well as being the goriest, and also having the most unique epilogue of all of the endings. Let me explain. So, in this ending, it plays out very similarly to I Love You, the Sekai ending. In this playthrough, you basically have to devote yourself to Sekai, but never miss an opportunity to get physical with Kotonoha. This makes Kotonoha very eager to please Makoto and realize that she needs sex appeal in order to do it. Now, Makoto apologizes to Sekai for wavering in between her and Kotonoha, and they hug and they say, you know, I love yous to each other, similar to I Love You, the ending. But after this, Makoto and Sekai go back to his apartment where his mother is, and so is Kotonoha. I guess, I don't know what they were going to do there, but you know, whatever. Anyway, Kotonoha is there, and the three of them have a conversation where Kotonoha basically begs Makoto to love her and not Sekai, but Makoto is now devoted to Sekai. We then see Kotonoha get a crazy look in her eyes, and then Sekai and Makoto just leave. I don't know if they just left Kotonoha there with Makoto's mom, but you know, whatever. Anyway, they go outside and they basically say it's a sad situation, but Makoto once again reaffirms that he's in love with only Sekai. After this, you may know what's coming. And if you're sensitive to this, I'm sorry, but you're in this deep, so you might as well finish to the end of the video. Anyway, Makoto and Sekai hear a sound of something falling behind them. They turn around just to lock eyes with a falling Kotonoha. This is very, very eerie, and it's unsettling for sure. Time slows as they look in each other's eyes, as Kotonoha then splats on the ground. Her head splits open, and you hear a scream coming from Sekai. This is brutal and gory. It's like her body melts into the pavement. It's really hard to watch, I'll be honest with you. And after this, we then get an epilogue of Makoto visiting Kotonoha's grave, I think a year later, if I'm not mistaken. You hear Makoto narrating about what happened. After that, him and Sekai eventually drifted apart. I mean, which makes sense because, they might blame themselves for what happened or whatever. Or whenever they're dating, they look in each other's eyes and they see the eyes of Kotonoha. She definitely scarred them for life, and I probably would be scarred for life too. And at this point, we get a unique and very interesting line about Makoto saying that after he graduated high school, he went on to become a nurse. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, of course. I don't know. It's unique because we never hear anything about like what they want to do with their lives outside of just banging each other, right? All we ever know about, and I'm going to make a video about this in the future, but all we know about like Makoto, Sekai, and Kotonoha is, sex and who they want to date and the drama. And that's what the story is about, but we don't find out much more about the characters other than that. So it's interesting that this would happen. The reason I guess Makoto became a nurse is because he wanted to help other people in mental health situations, which is pretty wholesome and pretty awesome if true, but the damage is already done, so maybe he's trying to make amends to society. Anyway, at this point, him and Sekai have drifted apart and they may never be together again. Kotonoha is dead and Makoto is just depressed and laments what happened. So, I don't know. I'm sorry that I know it's kind of off topic with the epilogue. I just think that could be a positive spin, but at the end of the day, this is a tragedy for all three characters involved, and it's bloody and it's gory. And I personally think this one is underrated. I really do. I'm gonna put this one in the A tier. Now, just remember everybody, I'm not rating these based on the best and worst outcome. I'm rating these on a scale of like what's most entertaining or what's most interesting or what's unique, I guess you might say. I'm putting this one in the A tier because for me it's the most memorable, and for me it's just, I don't know, it's depressing, but there could still be some light at the end of this tunnel. It's just a very sad way to go. It's a doomed world for sure, but I don't know. It's sad, it's depressing, but we'll move on to the final one. Alright, Pushed Too Far is the final ending we're going to talk about, and what makes this one unique is that it's an HQ exclusive, meaning it wasn't in the original visual novel, which only had 3 bad endings. Let me explain. So in this playthrough, Makoto will start off by having sex and dating Sekai, but will ultimately pivot in the mid to late game to Kotonoha. Now, him and Sekai have sex pretty often, but after they break up, Sekai runs into the arms of Taisuke, who, as we know by this point, is just an absolute horrible person, and this leads to an unconsensual encounter. After this, Sekai will end up saying that she is pregnant, and she goes to Makoto saying the baby is his. Makoto will argue back saying no, actually that baby's Taisuke's. The game implies that due to the timing, it's most likely Taisuke or the result of Taisuke's assault, but we don't know. Anyway, Sekai calls up Makoto, who denies it and says no, it's not my child. We then get the final scene of Makoto and Kotonoha at the train station, having a good couple life and lamenting what's happening with Sekai, but realizing that, it's none of their business out of their hands at this point. And out of nowhere, Kotonoha falls onto the train tracks. However, she doesn't fall onto the train tracks as it's discovered that Sekai has snuck up on them and pushed Kotonoha in there. At the final second, Makoto tries to pull Kotonoha back, but is unable to, and Kotonoha gets hit by the train, with Makoto hanging on to Kotonoha's now severed arm. We see Sekai laughing, and that's it. That's the end of the game. Now, this is a good ending. I just can't give it an A tier. I'm going to give it a B tier. I love the emotion on Makoto's face here. I love that he tried to save her. I love the fear in Kotonoha. Well, I mean, I don't love it, but you know what I mean. Like it looks interesting. It looks good. It's animated well. I mean, it's emotional. And Sekai looks terrifying. But the thing is, this is the first time we've seen Sekai looking more like vindictive or deranged or angry or something like that. I mean, in the past, yes, in the anime and in To My Child, yes, Sekai is a murderer. However, when you look at her face, it looks like she did something out of passion, you know, like she's sad, right? Like she snapped. Here it looks like she's evil, which just seems out of character for her, right? Like, if she was gonna push Kotonoha onto the train, I would think she would look like it's like she just did it all of a sudden on impulse versus something that was premeditated, right? I don't know. I don't know what y'all think. So I'm going to put it in the B tier. Let me know what you think about any of these endings. And for that, we'll move on to the outro. Alrighty, and that was every school day's ending ranked. Let me know what you think. I might do one for Shiny Days at some point way down the line, as well as maybe the PS2 port, the LXH port of it, which is kind of hard to say, and what you think of the video. I've got some more School Days videos coming up, so do you agree? Do you disagree? What do you want to see? And if you want to see just more of me, check out my second channel where I've been building an AI waifu. You can also check out my fan fictions. I'm a big fan of those. I'm a big fan of my own work, patting myself on the back, giving myself the medal. You know what I mean? No, but seriously, I like them a lot. Check them out. And I also have a free game on itch.io if you want to check out. It's not much, but you know, I made it, so it's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, with that out of the way, check out the channel and leave a nice comment, like, comment, subscribe, dislike if you dislike it, and I will see y'all later. Thanks so much. And with that, let's move on.